On today's show, Dallas Mavs Media Day is here. We'll be talking to most of the Dallas Mavericks. What question would you want to ask a Dallas Maverick? And then, Jae Crowder demanded a trade from the Phoenix Suns, and it looks like they're going to give it to him. We'll talk about that. Could the Mavs make a deal for him and more on today's Locked On Mavs?
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good! And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
And welcome. You're locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager from the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where the best way you can help us grow the show is to comment anything below. Let us know. You can ask one Maverick one question. What would you ask? Luka, Dinwiddie, Christian Wood, Jaden Hardy, Dorian Finney-Smith, all kinds of questions that you can ask. We'll talk about that today. I'm running solo today this morning when you guys are checking us out, hopefully before Mavs Media Day. And we got a couple things to talk about Media Day. We're back. We're back. The boys are back. They're letting your boys back at Media Day. We'll be there in person exactly like we were last year, talking to the Mavericks. We'll have a station at Media Day where we will conduct one-on-one interviews with Mavericks. If you want to check out some of ours from yesterday or from last year, go check out our playlist on YouTube. We have all of them in full there. We'll be doing the exact same thing. We'll be asking them questions. We got a couple questions that we'll ask every single Maverick, a couple of them specifically for specific Mavericks. Should be pretty fun, and we'll have those going up throughout the day on YouTube, so make sure you're subscribed. 17,000 of you have already subscribed to Locked On Mavs on YouTube. Let's get to 20K. Let's get to 20K. Can we get to 20K before the season? That seems insane. Season starts like in a month or so. I don't know. Is that so insane to get to 20,000 subscribers on YouTube? So we will be back at Media Day, Isaac and I conducting interviews along with our great crew that we're going to bring. And Media Day is interesting. We talked a lot on Friday about what we want to see at Media Day and what you actually get out of it. Because in today's day and age with Twitter and Twitter reporters and everything that Woj and Shams tweet out all the time about what everybody's thinking at any given moment, it's hard to not know something at this point, right? Like, we know everything, it seems like. We know when a team, or we know when a suspension for a coach is coming, or like potentially coming, when a team is thinking about it. Like that whole Ime Udoka thing, the Boston Celtics coach that was, Adrian Wojnarowski tweeted out that the Celtics were thinking about possibly suspending him or even some kind of disciplinary action. Like, we knew that before it happened. So it's hard to not know things in today's. But there's a couple things about the Mavericks I think we don't know yet, that we haven't gotten to ask very direct questions about. And we kind of know like where the Mavericks feel on certain things. We know what the starting lineup is already. Like, we know that already because Jason Kidd offered it up. Tim Cato reported on the fifth starter going to be Reggie Bullock. So we know that it's going to be Luka, Dinwiddie, the Bang Bros, and the two wings, and Dorian and Reggie Bullock. And then it's going to be
JaVale McGee.
We know JaVale McGee is going to get the start, according to Jason Kidd. So that means that
Man, you're casual.
That means that Christian Wood's coming off the bench. We already know that. So that's something we know going into Media Day. Now, does that change? That would be interesting. That would be interesting, something to learn at Media Day if that had changed. People doing press conferences at Media Day on Monday. Jason Kidd, Luka Doncic. So this is like the press conferences for everybody. Everybody's going to be involved in these press conferences. Those will be on the Mavs Twitch and YouTube and things like that. Those are not the interviews that we're going to do. But Jason Kidd, Luka Doncic, Spencer Dinwiddie, Tim Hardaway Jr., Maxi Kleber, Dorian Finney-Smith, Reggie Bullock,
JaVale McGee.
and Christian Wood.
Man, you're casual.
We'll all be doing the big interviews with everybody. So all people will be in there. Isaac and I will not be a part of those, but we will do our own individual interviews with a number of those players and a couple that aren't on that list as well. So there are some players that you won't hear from at Media Day that you will hear from us, which is kind of fun. But we'll hear from those players. So they'll get to ask Jason Kidd about that starting lineup thing, if he's going to stick with that. If Christian Wood,
man, you're casual.
If Christian Wood is not going to start, or if he's going to come off the bench, and then we'll get to ask Christian Wood straight up, what do you think about that? What do you think about coming off the bench to start the season? Because no one's asked him about that yet. Like, we don't know that yet. Talk about things that we don't know about Media Day. That's one of the things. How does Christian Wood feel about that? Tim McMahon on the recent episode of his ESPN podcast, talked about how he believes in knowing Christian Wood's camp and everything, that Christian Wood thinks he's the second best player on the Mavericks. He's definitely the second most talented player on the Mavericks. I kind of think by far. There's not many Mavericks that check as many boxes talent-wise as he does, athletically, shooting the ball, rolling, like rim rolling and all that stuff. He checks a lot of boxes. That's why he's the second highest rated Maverick in NBA 2K. He's got a lot of skills. He's got a lot of talent there. But he's coming off the bench. So how does that work? How does he think about that? And then my big question about this is, how does management present him? How does Nico Harrison and Jason Kidd, we're supposed to get Nico Harrison. We'll see if we get Nico Harrison. He was elusive from us last year, but we were supposed to get Nico Harrison. I'm interested to look at Nico Harrison and say, what about this Christian Wood guy? What do you guys expect him to be? What do you think he's going to be for your team? And that's something we're going to learn hopefully at Media Day. But I want to know how they present him, because how they present him is going to set him up and set us up to know what they think of him and how they're going to use him this year. Because they're not setting him up, especially coming off the bench. They're not setting him up as, oh, we think this guy is all-star caliber player. He's going to come in, immediately be the number 2. He's going to replace the production from Jalen Brunson. He's just going to be, they're not presenting him like that. When they traded for him, Nico Harrison talked at 2 a.m. in front of media on draft night, in front of Isaac and everybody.
Explain yourself. Sorry.
Where that drop came from. That drop came from like 2 a.m. on the night when Christian Wood was traded. Or the night when the official Christian Wood trade came down. That Christian Wood is going to have to prove some things to the Mavericks. And that the Mavericks are going to have to prove some things to Christian Wood because he's on an expiring deal. Like this is a 1-year deal for him. And so how does each side kind of present it? I'm going to ask Christian Wood too, what do you think you have to prove to the Mavericks? And then ask Nico Harrison the same thing. What does he need to prove to you guys? It's a prove-it year for him. So what things have to be proved? Is it defensively? He has to prove that to me. I don't know if he has to prove that to the Mavericks, but he's got to prove that to me for me to feel good about this team going into the playoffs. So Christian Wood, there's a lot of different things around him, and how management presents him is something that I want to know. There's a bunch of things we don't know going into Media Day, and that's one of them. Exactly how they think about it, how his teammates think about him, and what Christian Wood thinks about himself. What does Christian Wood think about himself? We saw the tweet that he had a little while ago where he referenced Derrick Rose. Where Derrick Rose, when Christian Wood was back playing in Detroit, Derrick Rose told Christian Wood, you'll be an all-star in 3 years. 3 years. You'll be an all-star. Well, guess what? This is year 3. This is year 3 since Derrick Rose told him that. And Christian Wood tweeted that out during the offseason. Christian Wood also talked about at Summer League when he was interviewed during a Mavericks Summer League game, was asked, well, what do you expect with this team? What do you want to do with this team? He's like, I just want to win. I just want to win. I just want to go in there and do anything it takes. Well, Jason Kidd's going to ask him to do some stuff that he hasn't done in the past. Defend the rim well, defend one-on-one, come off the bench. Like, he hasn't done that in a couple of years. He's been the guy in Houston. He thought he was the best player in Houston for a couple of years after James Harden was traded. And so now he comes into this scenario. How much do you want to win? How does management set him up, and how does he consider himself going into this whole scenario? Hopefully we'll get some answers about that in Media Day, because it's all going to be really fascinating. Coming up, a couple questions about Spencer Dinwiddie, because his role is honestly maybe more important than Christian Wood's going into the year. He's one of the biggest X factors. Him and Christian Wood are just huge pieces for the Mavericks. ESPN's 69th ranked player, Spencer Dinwiddie. We'll talk about him. And then Jae Crowder demanded a trade. Could the Mavericks get into it? I'll talk about that in the second segment as well coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about BetOnline. It's the best place to check out the odds and lines inside and outside of sports. You can't play Media Day bingo on BetOnline. Sorry, you can't. But you can already go ahead and check out conference futures. Western Conference, the Mavericks are plus 1,200. Holy cow. They have them behind the Warriors, Clippers, Suns, Lakers, Nuggets, and Grizzlies to win the Western Conference. Behind the Grizzlies. And behind the Lakers. Behind the Lakers thing is just a Vegas thing. They always put the Lakers way too high on these things. But if you're betting plus 700 for the Lakers to win the Western Conference, I got some questions. I may have a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you, or wherever that bridge is that's not there. A London Bridge. You'll be really disappointed with the London Bridge if I sold you that one. They also have division odds. That's interesting to me because when's the last time we ever talked about the division? The Mavericks are plus 135 to win the Southwestern Division. Memphis is plus 110 and New Orleans is plus 400. The Rockets are plus 50,000. Holy cow. The Rockets and Spurs are both plus 50,000. So check it out. There's all kinds of interesting odds on BetOnline. It's BetOnline where the game starts. All right, Isaac, we're continuing to talk about Media Day. Spencer Dinwiddie. I got some questions about Spencer Dinwiddie. How do Kid and Luka and Nico Harrison and others talk about Spencer Dinwiddie? That's what I want to know. I want to ask them about Spencer Dinwiddie, about the ball handler situation. Adjacent to the ball handler situation is how they feel about Spencer Dinwiddie. The Mavericks have two ball handlers, Luka and Spencer Dinwiddie. Now, can Frank Ntilikina handle the ball? Can Josh Green handle the ball? Can Jaden Hardy handle the ball? Sure, but they can't handle the ball on the level that the Mavericks want to reach. All right, you're playing the Clippers on a Thursday night on TNT, and it's like a big deal. And it comes down to, all right, we got to win this stretch in the third quarter when Luka is on the bench. Who can step up? Maybe Dinwiddie is out. Dinwiddie's injured. Luka has to sit for a while. Who's handling the ball? They have a problem. They only have two guys. And Mavs assistant coach Greg St. Jean told us on this podcast that they don't see a time when Luka or Dinwiddie will not be on the floor. At least one of those two guys. But I see one of those times because those guys miss games. Those guys get injured a lot. So who else is going to step up? But I'm interested to see how they talk about Spencer Dinwiddie because of the need the Mavericks have and how big of a role he's going to have. He's going to be huge this year. Huge this year. He's the only other ball handler on the team, really. The only credible ball handler on the team. And so how does Luka talk about him? Does he say, I have full trust in Spencer Dinwiddie? Probably. That's probably what he's going to say. Luka is pretty cut and dry when it comes to media stuff, any kind of media stuff. Dirk mentioned that recently. Dirk was on either WFAA or 105.3. He went on like a million radio stations to talk about his Dirk tennis event that happened this past weekend that seemed to go off really, really well. And he said, Luka was a lot like me with the media when I first started. I just wanted to say the right things. It's my second language. For Luka, it was like his fourth or fifth language, English is. And so he just wanted to say the right things, didn't want to say too much. He's starting to get a little bit more comfortable. We're starting to see it. Hopefully he gets a little bit comfortable with us today on Media Day on Monday. But how do they talk about Spencer Dinwiddie? Did they start singing his praises, or do they say, he's going to be the one to step up this year? Or do they start saying, we've seen him. He's been working out. He also buzzed his hair. I saw it on Instagram. He's got he had the fro going, and then he posted on Instagram a picture of him in the barber chair, and then he posted a picture of all the hair on the ground. So I'm interested to see what he looks like too on Media Day. I'm also the one sneaky thing I'm interested to hear is how did Jason Kidd, Nico Harrison, basically management. How does management talk about the Mavs overachieving last year? That's a real sneaky thing that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about, but the Jason Kidd and Nico Harrison in exit interviews right after they lost to the Golden State Warriors talked about how the Mavericks had overachieved this year, had done better than they had expected. How do they do that? How do they handle that going into this year? How do they handle expectations? They're going to talk about expectations. I just know it. I just know they're going to bring up expectations for this team. Now, this is Jason. Ready? Where's the Jason Kidd drop?
Good morning, Isaac.
I think that, there are some expectations for this team. And we know that last year we went to the final. We went to the Western Conference Finals. That's not going to happen every year. Only 4 teams get to go to the conference finals. That's not going to happen every year. We want it to be, this thing where you get better and better every year. And some years it doesn't work like that, but
this is a positive world.
And then he'll spin it into something else. He'll spin it into some kind of other positive thing. But I'm interested to see how they talk about the team. All right, so Jae Crowder has been like this. There's this weird situation with Jae Crowder in Phoenix. So Phoenix Suns wing. Mavs played against him in the second round. He is just one of those players you don't want to play against. He's just super annoying to play against. But he's been on a lot of really good teams. So this reporter, Dwayne Rankin, tweets this list of 5 or 6 things that are that we're looking into for Suns training camp, things to watch. It's like Sarver selling the team. DeAndre Ayton didn't want to come back because of the contract situation, Chris Paul getting older, things like that. And one of those was, will Jae Crowder or Cameron Johnson start? That was his tweet. Will Jae Crowder or Cameron Johnson start? That was one of the bullet points in his tweet. And Jae Crowder, from his own Twitter account, quote tweets it and says, 99 won't be there. When Jae Crowder was in Dallas, he wore number 9. But ever since then, he's worn 99. And said 99 won't be there. So Jae Crowder talking about himself in the third person, I guess. If you mention your own number, is that third person? I guess so. I guess, yeah, because it's like talking about yourself in the outside perspective. But he said 99 won't be there, as talking about Suns training camp. Basically saying he's requesting a trade. And so those Suns, with just another press release, like how many press releases has that team had to do in the last little while? Some of them for better things than others. But the Suns released a press release that said this Phoenix Suns and forward Jae Crowder have mutually agreed that he will not be with the team for training camp. So my guy's just not, he's not going to start. Cam Johnson's going to start instead of him. It's been a badly kept secret, I guess. All the reporters around the team talk about how Cam Johnson's going to get the start this year. So Jae Crowder's going to the bench, and now Jae Crowder doesn't want to be with the Suns at all. So now they're going to trade him. Then Jae Crowder tweeted this in all caps. Should I scream it? Should I scream it so it sounds like in all caps? One must seek work where he is wanted, where he is needed. I am thankful for what these past 2 years have taught me. Now I must take another challenge with continued hard work and dedication. For those of you who closed the door on me, thank you. 99 back soon. If he said talk soon at the end, I would have just fainted. And then he tweeted like the ninja emoji at the end of it. So Jae Crowder wants out of the Suns. That's it. That whole situation is so interesting because the Suns have so much stuff going on. They were a 64-win team last year, and they just lose the way that they did in Game 7 against the Mavericks. You know, it's chef's kiss for us, but for them, it's catastrophe. Chris Paul turned 29. Chris Paul turned 37. During that series, remember Jason Kidd, happy birthday CP. That was a great drop during the playoffs. He turns 37, so he's getting older. At what point does he start to fall off? DeAndre Ayton may not want to be there. Now Jae Crowder doesn't want to be there. The whole Robert Sarver thing is looming over them. Even though the Sarver thing, I'm not considering as big of a deal for them because it seemed like he was pretty removed from the whole situation even last year. But on the court, they still got some stuff to figure out with these guys not wanting to be on this team. So for the Mavericks, can they get Jae Crowder? Sure, they could get Jae Crowder. They could try to get Jae Crowder. They could trade him straight up for Dwight Powell. That contract works both sides. So then you say, all right, well, why would the Suns do it? Well, the Suns don't necessarily have a bunch of backup bigs because guess where one of their backup bigs is? It's in Dallas, in JaVale McGee. JaVale McGee is with the Mavericks now. So their backup bigs are like Bismack Biyombo, who they brought back, who's like 6'8", it's fine. And then Dario Saric, who's coming back from injury, but he's more like a 4. That he plays like a small ball 5 for them every once in a while. But if they're going to lose Jae Crowder, then they could use another 4 like him, to fill some minutes. Because after that, they really only have like Torrey Craig, Cam Johnson to play their 4, and that's a pretty shallow situation they have. Now they also brought in Jock Landale from the Suns, but he's going to play some 5. I don't see him as a 4. Or from the Spurs. They brought him in. But so they could use a Dwight Powell maybe. Maybe they need like another just center off the bench. But then they could also throw him a second. Here are the seconds that the Mavericks have. Their 2025 second round pick goes to the Knicks if their 2023 first round pick isn't conveyed. It's going to be conveyed. The Mavericks are going to be that good. It's only like top 10 protected or something like that. Then they also have a 2027 second round pick and a 2029. So maybe they throw him 1 second. I don't think that's enough for the Suns. And I don't think the Suns are dying to get back Josh Green, or I don't know that the Mavs want to give up Jaden Hardy. I just don't think that's something that they want to do. So could they do it? Sure. They could try to do it. They could try to throw him a second. I don't know if Jae Crowder's price is going to be a first round pick. There's going to be some teams looking into him. But we just saw Bojan Bogdanovic not get a first round pick. And I don't think Jae Crowder is better than Bojan Bogdanovic. So it's the timing of it. Bojan didn't get a first round pick for him because of the timing of everything. So coming up, if the Mavericks did get Jae Crowder, what would he bring to the team? Why should the Mavericks want to go after him? We'll talk about that. And then another kind of sneaky thing is that Kemba Walker is not going to show up to camp for the Pistons. So could the Mavericks get in on that? Could he be the third ball handler the Mavs need? We'll talk about that coming up. That was the chair. All right, Isaac. Let's continue to talk about the Dallas Mavericks. Jae Crowder has demanded a trade, and the Suns are going to give it to him. How many players have demanded a trade, or we thought they were going to get traded, and they either didn't, or like KD? Remember John Collins was like absolutely going to get traded at the draft, and he didn't. He's going into, they already had their media day over the weekend. So Jae Crowder, what would he bring to the Mavericks? Jae Crowder was with the Mavericks, forever ago. He actually played in that 2014 playoff series against the Spurs when Vince Carter hit that game-winning shot in that one game. That's pretty wild that that's how long ago he was with the Mavericks. That was like one of his first years in the NBA. But what would he bring? He's 32 years old. He started every single game for Phoenix last year. A 64-win team. He started every single game. So that's big time. They could have started Cam Johnson. They decided not to. They had a couple other options they could have gone with, but Jae Crowder was their guy. He started every game, and he brings playoff experience. 107 playoff games for Jae Crowder in his career. I mentioned he was part of that 2014 team with Dirk that took the Spurs to Game 7. That was a wild series. He went to the finals twice with Miami in 2020 and then Phoenix in 2021. So the bubble year and then Phoenix versus the Milwaukee Bucks. He was on that team. He went to the Eastern Conference Finals with the Celtics in 2017. He went to the second round with Utah in 2018, and then we all know what happened in Phoenix in 2022, where they lost to the Mavericks. So he went to the second round there. But 107 playoff games is a ton. I would guarantee it's the most. Yeah, it's the most on the Dallas Mavericks by like a lot. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe if you added up all the playoff games the Mavericks have played, that might equal it. Because there's just not a lot of guys with tons of playoff experience on the Mavericks. After last year, maybe it changes. But the other thing he brings is he's a solid defender. He's a solid defender, positional defender. He's not like your lockdown guy. I don't know if I would start him over Reggie Bullock or Dorian Finney-Smith. That brings up another question. But he's going to be solid defensively. He's going to bring some solid stuff. And then streaky shooting. Regular season, over the last 424 games of his career in the regular season, he shoots 35.5%. Solid. Like, that's solid shooting. He takes about 6 a game. In the playoffs, about 34.5% on 6 3-point attempts per game in 90 playoff games. That's since 2017. So the last 5 or 6 years, he's been a solid 3-point shooter, but he is streaky. Really streaky. In 2021, in that playoff run of the Suns against Houston, he hit 8 threes in a game. That's crazy. 8 threes in a game. Now, Maxi Kleber hit that many in a game in the playoffs, but he's also hit 6 threes in a playoff game 8 times. He's hit 5 threes in a playoff game 14 times. So that's 23 times that Jae Crowder over in his career has hit 5 or more threes in a playoff game. And he's only shooting 34% in that time span. So that's streakiness. That's like the highs of he's going to hit 6 threes in a game, 5 threes in a game, or he's going to hit no threes or 1 3 and miss 6 of them. Just real streaky. Can you rely on him? It depends. He's swung some playoff series for some teams because he either could hit a bunch of threes or couldn't hit a bunch of threes. Kind of like Maxey and Reggie Bullock and Dorian did for the Mavs last year. The other thing that he would bring to the Mavericks is juice. He brings some juice. He brings energy and just a boost for every team he plays for. He's just so annoying to play against. The Mavericks and the Suns, I just felt like every time Jae Crowder did anything in that Suns series, it was just annoying. He's complaining about something. He's getting in somebody's face. He's doing something. There's just always something about him. But he's one of those players that you hate it when you're playing against him, but you love it when he's on your team. So he would bring some juice to the Mavs, and I'd be interested to see if the Mavericks could move for him. We'll see what happens and how much he actually goes for. If it's a first-round pick, the Mavs can't do it. They can't start giving up first-round picks for guys like Jae Crowder. But a second and Dwight Powell, that could work. But he won't start. I don't think. He's not going to start over Reggie or Dorian for me. They're just too integral to what this team brings. I think Bullock's a better shooter and a defender. So he's better at 3 and D than Jae Crowder is, which is what you bring him in to do. So you'd bring him off the bench. Is that what he wants? I don't know. I shouted that whole tweet that he sent out, and it doesn't seem like coming off the bench is something that he would want to do. I don't know. We'll see. That's the big question. Kemba Walker, according to Shams Charania, Pistons Kemba Walker will likely be away from the team as training camp opens this week. Detroit will need to waive or trade one player, so either Kemba or somebody else, by October 17th. So it's got to happen soon in the next 3 or 4 weeks or so to be at the league limit for standard roster spots going into the season. So the Pistons have to make a decision. They have to decide. They got too many guaranteed rosters. They made too many trades. And so they have to waive somebody. Kemba Walker is the guy that's like a real easy one. He's making $9.1 million. He's an undrafted he's an unrestricted free agent after this year, so it's an expiring deal. Hamidou Diallo's expiring for them. Corey Joseph, Rodney Magruder, they're all expiring. So Rodney Magruder may be the guy if they decide to keep Kemba. But what I think is going to happen is the Pistons are going to start to look around the league. They're going to canvass the league. Who wants Kemba Walker? And everyone will say, not me. And then they'll just waive him. And he'll be the guy because he's not going to go to training camp. And that already is a sign that he doesn't want to be with the team. They don't really have a role for him. They've got Killian Hayes to try and work through. They got Cade Cunningham already. Like they got Corey Joseph. They have ball handlers. Like they have guards. They have Jaden Ivey now, who's going to be a huge role for them. So maybe they couldn't talk Kemba Walker into being a mentor for Jaden Ivey. So they got all these guards. Kemba's not going to have a real role. He wants to go to a place with a real role, so they're going to waive him. And then I think the Mavericks could try to pick him up. I think they should try to. He's not as good as Dragic would be. He's not as good as some of the other options the Mavericks have had this summer. But he'd be somebody. They'd be taking a flyer on him, see if he's got anything. The role that reportedly that the Mavericks offered Dragic would be perfect for Kemba. You play like once every 3 or 4 days. You're not going to have this huge consistent role. You'll be our third ball handler. It's not like they would play Luka and Dinwiddie and Kemba together. They would maybe do Luka and Kemba, Dinwiddie and Kemba as like ball handlers. And that would be his role. And they'll try to see if he's got anything left in the tank. The last time we saw Kemba, by the way, he looked terrible. Like maybe completely washed. But he started 37 games for the Knicks. Did not look particularly good. But they brought him in as a starter. They brought him in as a guy that was like, he's supposed to be their point guard. What the Knicks brought in Jalen Brunson to do, they wanted Kemba to do first. Which is kind of weird because the Mavericks went after Kemba in free agency a couple years ago. And then Brunson became what they wanted Kemba to be. And now Brunson is going to be what the Knicks wanted Kemba to be. So maybe it'll work out in the opposite way for the Mavericks this time. But Kemba was going to come to the Mavericks a couple years ago. And then it's the year when Al Horford went back to the Celtics. They didn't know that was going to happen. And so that whole thing messed up all that. So the Mavericks have had interest in him in the past. Now, it was the past regime. It wasn't Nico Harrison and them. It was Don Nelson and them. But Kemba Walker would be an interesting flyer. They got the roster spot open and bring him in, see what he can do. If not, then you can waive him and try somebody else. It's going to be a rotating cast until they make a trade or they get somebody in. So let us know in the comment section. What do you think about Kemba Walker? What do you think about a Jae Crowder trade? What kind of questions would you ask at Media Day? There's all kinds of great stuff. We will be here 5 days a week now. We're back to 5 days a week, and we're going to be doing all kinds of interviews at Media Day. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs. Now go listen to Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Great stuff from Josh Lloyd. He's just the GOAT. Incredible at fantasy basketball. Got mock drafts. He's got hour-long stuff. He's got his daily show. He's got previews on every single team on fantasy, so go check it out. Guys, thanks for listening to Locked On Mavs. Peace out. Boom!